I'm going to welcome you all to our virtual speaker series for 2025. Today's webinar is titled The World of Not Good Enough, and it is provided by the PA Care Partnership, which is a statewide system of care grant in association with the Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, better known as OMSAS. And with that, I will toss it over to Colleen to introduce our speaker.
Great. Good morning, everyone. We're happy to have you with us. I'm excited to introduce our keynote speaker, Kara Vorchek. She has presented many times at different events for me, and I know you're going to love her presentation and her message. She is a licensed clinical social worker with 20 plus years experience. She was a social worker for about 10 years and has her own private practice now for over 13 years. Her specialty is working with teens, college students, adults, and families. Kara now travels the country speaking on trauma-informed schools and businesses and what self-care really looks like. Kara also performs You Matter assemblies at high schools. Recently, she started working as a mental health advisor to sports teams. Kara is passionate about the work of suicide prevention in schools, communities, and she's trained in EMDR and IFS. So I'm really excited to have Kara be part of today. So enjoy. Kara, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. This is my favorite topic. When I used to work with a school district, I felt like I was more constrained with things I could say, but I love that I'm just representing myself. So sometimes if I cuss, I apologize. I try not to, but sometimes when I work with teens, we keep it real. So the biggest thing I would say is as I started my work and working with sports teams this fall, that was quite the experience. I was on the sidelines with a football team, a high school varsity football team. I was on the sidelines with a high school girls volleyball team. And just tonight, we're wrapping up our banquet. I worked with a girls basketball team. I've really enjoyed that experience. I think I was surprised, and people say, you've been doing this work for so long. How are you so surprised? I was surprised with the fragility of today's youth. I had no idea. Being on the sidelines, so today's youth, how are they different? That's a question that's often asked and often talked about. For me, the fragility piece, what does that mean? I think that we have kids that are so anxious, so depressed, so worried about making mistakes and afraid to feel their feelings. And we're going to talk about that a lot. So this hustle of love and belonging is kind of a term that one of my favorite authors, Brene Brown, kind of coined. This idea that I have to work for external validation, that I rely on external validation for the internal void, that I need people to tell me that I'm good enough. I need people to tell me that I'm loved. I need people to tell me that I'm worth it. And there's nothing coming from inside. I was on the sidelines of this football team and this kid dropped the ball and he came off and he just started sobbing. I was working with this girls volleyball team and the amount of bullying that's happening. So what I experienced was the football team, their problem was externalizing all their emotion. They got in fights a lot, and we had to talk about that. The girls were internalizing and kind of were externalizing it amongst the team, and there was a lot of fights. So I would say more fragile. I would say I am really big on this generous assumption. Everyone is doing the best they can with what they know. Think about that. Everyone is doing the best they can with what they know. Often I do these presentations and people come up to me and they say, man, like I was thinking about this as a clinician, but you really got me thinking about my own kid and how I've messed them up. We are all imperfect people raising imperfect children. Let's also just set the bar for that. And there's a lot of job security. So I do not want you leaving today thinking you have messed up your kid. You haven't. But one of the things is we have parents that don't want our kids to feel any kind of negative emotion. We don't want our kids to fail. There's helicopter parents, there's snowplow parents. I paved the road. A kid gets a bad grade. I'm texting my mom. Mrs. Brown doesn't like me. The mom's calling up the teacher. Why don't you like my kid? We have to let our kids learn how to fail. And when I used to work in high schools, I would say, I hope that you don't get the part. And they're like, that is such a weird thing for you to say. And I said, I want you to know that you can fail and things can be okay. This is the most support you're ever going to have. I've been reading a lot of books about today's teens, and they actually are also less rebellious. And you might think that was a good thing, but they're not pushing the lines. They're not extending the boundaries. They're not trying to sneak out. And I'm not suggesting that we need more kids sneaking out, but we want kids being curious and pushing the boundaries. We all know about cell phones and social media and all of that. I think for me, the biggest thing is the location thing has become such a thing that parents are so obsessed with locating where their kids are going at all times. When I was growing up, I would have to go to the Rudders or go to the Wawa, and I would have to ask where I was at, which took some personal accountability, right? I'd have to print off MapQuest things. Right now, everything is at our access, and we're not learning how to problem solve. I can Google the answer, I can call my parents, and so we don't have that ability to kind of have that pride of figuring things out. So that's what I would kind of say about today's youth. Also, if I was doing this live, I would have you raise your hand. If at any time, I know I talk fast, so I'm going to work on that too. If at any time you have any questions, please just say something in the chat, or, hey, Kara, I have a question. And I would love to just have it be informal at that time. Okay. So I'm not going to go into a lot of depression and anxiety today, but depression and anxiety are the umbrella that we are feeling like we are struggling for our worth, and we have to hustle. We have to prove that our worth. So if I had depression, I'm looking through a straw, and that is all that I can see. Okay, I can't see this family that cares about me, or the sports team, or my dog, or all these things. All I see is this. And I wake up, and then the anxiety comes at it too. It's no one likes you. Everyone's talking about you. You're going to have a bad day. You're going to fail. You shouldn't be here. You're not your brother. So we start having this internal dialogue. And any undiagnosed mental health disorder can become depression. Depression looks very good and different in guys to girls. For guys, it could be that anger. So when I go to assemblies, I talk about the guy who's going to the party, who's getting drunk all the time. Or I'm pretty real when I talk to these kids. Like, if you're getting high every single day, or, oh, Miss V, I just needed to go to sleep. There is something that's happening that you're not able to feel your feelings. And so there's this depression that's kicking in. So depression is, when I talk with clients, I say hopelessness, loneliness, feeling abandoned, betrayed, kind of like this idea that this dark cloud is always following me no matter where I go. And the thing is, when I was working as a school social worker, we had 3 suicides in 3 years. And I remember getting a call and said, Kara, what is going on down in your school district? We had 2 students, a male 8th grader, a 10th grade male, and a teacher. And I will never forget, it was an open casket for the teacher. And I will never forget being at that space with all of these kids, or being in the library with all of these kids. And the teachers were like, what have we done wrong? And we just saw him, and he was just at the locker, and I should have done more. And the really hard thing to understand in this work is people who want to die are going to die. And that just sounds really morbid and horrible. But just like with heart attacks and all these things, we can do all of these things to try to keep people alive, but people who want to die find a way. And so our work and my work is like, I want to get to that prevention place so that doesn't even feel like the best option. We need to remember this. It really triggers me when I hear people say people who die by suicide are selfish, right? When you are contemplating suicide, your brain is sick. And this is what you're saying to yourself. I'm a burden. The world would be better off without me. Everyone would be better off. And as much as we know about the array of factors, there's so many. And often, and maybe you've experienced this as a school, families, and I don't know what this feels like, so this is not judgmental at all. Families often blame the school for things, but often we don't really know what's going on at home. We don't really know. In my experience, I have known of some suicides where the student was gay, and that was not okay in the culture of their house. I've known of another one that had never gotten in trouble and got in trouble, and that wasn't okay. When that shame part kicks up, it's a very impulsive thing. I think the research is now showing it used to be more, I'm writing a note and I'm giving my prized possessions away. And while that is still true in times, for me, in my experience with people thinking about it and attempting, it is more impulsive. We have to be really specific in our work. If someone says man, I just don't want to be here anymore. I wish I was invisible. I wish I could just go away. I wish I could just go away. Often as practitioners, we go, oh my gosh, get the suicide assessment out, do all these screenings, the Columbia, all these things, dot, 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 dot. Be aware of that panic part that comes up in you. A student or a teenager or any age saying to you, I don't want to be here. Well, let's get to know that part of you. You heard that I'm trained in IFS, Internal Family Systems, which is a modality by Dick Schwartz. I swear by it. It's the best kind of therapy. I see an internal family systems therapist. To me, I'm going to talk about that later, but let's get to know that part of you. So this suicide part just wants to get you out of this pain. They're not saying they want to die, right? They're just saying, I don't want to be here. I don't want to feel like that. There's a normalizing that we have all felt that at some time, and we need to normalize that. Now, I tell my clients, but if you say, Kara, if I go home, I'm going to take these 30 pills by my nightstand, we're calling your parents. But sometimes and I get it, we live in a liability world, and I get it. I have been in the trenches with you, but just ask some more curiosity instead of judgment. Lean into that. So tell me what you don't want to feel anymore. What does that feel like? Or tell me what would be different if you weren't here. That's where the meat and potatoes comes up. Try not to get triggered as soon as someone says that. So we talked about depression, and I could do a whole segment on depression. I'm just doing depression and anxiety just as kind of a lead in to the title. I am seeing anxiety off the chart. And what we know about anxiety is you have to lean into the hard thing. So if something happens on the bus, we have parents that are saying, I'm just going to drive you to school. If I get attacked by a dog, all dogs are bad, and I'm just going to have a cat. If I'm afraid of water, I never go to the pool. The magic happens when we lean into that hard thing, when we get uncomfortable. We have youth that don't want to be uncomfortable and parents that don't want to see kids struggle. Those of us that have anxiety, it feels like you're on a roller coaster and it won't shut off. You're on a hamster wheel. We're constantly playing the tape back. If you walk in a high school or a middle school, most people have their AirPods in and their heads are down, right? And they said, I know everyone's judging me. And I said, well, they're probably worried that you're judging them. Are you judging them? No. We're all kind of worried that we're judging ourselves. And this is what it comes down to, that internal dialogue that's running. Nobody likes me. It's be better if I'm not here. I'm going to fail that test. I look ugly. I look fat. I look stupid. There's the anxiety part. There's the depression part. And when those take over, it's really hard to lean in and do that hard thing. We have to force our youth, I cannot say it enough, to lean in and do the hard thing. Things I didn't know were anxiety, feeling unable to, afraid to speak up, believing everyone was silently judging me, thinking I had to be perfect. And we will do a whole segment on that. Resenting myself for not living up to everyone else's standards, didn't want to come off as stupid. So many of our 504s in schools are because of this anxiety component. I don't want to speak in front of the class. Can I do it in a smaller place? Because they're judging me, because they're making fun of me. A lot of our self-worth is based in this idea that everyone is judging me. Again, if I'm basing my worth on the external world and everyone is judging me and I don't have any kind of self-worth coming inside that, hey, it's okay to make mistakes. It's all going to work out. No one's judging you. Do I have any way to challenge that inner critic? And we'll talk about that. Anxiety and fear are cousins, but not twins. Fear sees a threat. Anxiety imagines one. So anxiety is those irrational thoughts that are always coming up. And that picture on the right is exactly what I'm talking about. Your comfort zone and where the magic happens. There's a lot of anxiety right now about planes. There's a lot of media showing all these plane crashes. I have a lot of clients coming in saying, I don't want to fly. I don't want to fly. I don't want to fly. So we get to know that part of them. And we can't tell them that they're not going to crash, right? There's no certainty. But what we talk about is your quality of life if this anxiety part keeps driving the bus. And then you have to figure out, is it worth that discomfort? I also say to them, and also about school shootings, CNN doesn't come on and say, 755,000 planes safely landed today. Nobody was hurt, right? What do? But, oh, there was a crash. Oh, was there a crash? There was a crash. We're not going into the safe spot and because that doesn't sell news, right? We're not saying 851 schools didn't have a shooting today. We're just hearing about the one. Now, is it a real threat? Are people dying? Absolutely. But we've got to find ways to work through, because when that anxiety part drives the bus, then we isolate, then we have the depression come. And when we have that trauma lens, and when trauma happens, we have the lens, the world is not a safe place. Now, there's a lot happening in the world that many of us might be thinking that. But when I live my life in that defense way and don't have trust in good things happening, that's when the mental health issues really continue. Does anybody have anything that they want to ask or say about anxiety, depression before I move on to the hustle part that we're talking about today? I can't hear anyone if anyone's saying something to me.
There's a hand up.
Okay.
Karina? Did you want to share, Karina? Karina, can you hear us? Okay. Why do they refuse medication?
That's a great question. Okay. In my experience, first of all, and does she mean parents or does she mean the student? I'll talk about both. In my experience, if I have a lot of depression or anxiety, there's a fear that what if I get on the medication and I don't get better? Then what? Right? Then what does that say about me? And also for anxiety, it's control, surrender, control, surrender. And so sometimes surrendering that control, I'm afraid to live without my anxiety. So there's this fear, A, that I'm not going to get better, or B, that I'm not going to be able to live in this space. And for parents, I think it's just that idea that I don't want to have my kids on medication. And I totally understand that. And are kids over medicated? Absolutely. In my experience, there's a lot of kids that actually need the medication who don't get it. And if your kid needs medication and you don't want them to get on it, in my experience, they are more likely to turn to substance abuse. That ADHD brain is going to get high every single day because it's the only thing that's slowing them down. With anxiety, people will come into my office and say, I hate my anxiety, Kara. I want to get rid of it. And I say, that may be true, Colleen, but you're also afraid to live without it. See, this anxiety protects you, that if I stay thinking of all the bad things that happen, I can prevent these things that happen. That's the control. I'm afraid that if my anxious part relaxes, then all of these bad things are going to happen. So you may hate your anxiety, but you're afraid to live without it. So sometimes we're afraid that A, the medicine will help us and then we won't be okay, or B, it won't help us. And then what does that say about us?
Okay. You mentioned the questions to ask when you hear someone say they don't want to be here. Can you go a little bit more in depth on that? Or is that going to be in another part of the presentation?
No, it's not in another part. I think that my whole point in that was suicide assessments are very, very helpful, and we need to do that for a lot of documentation purposes. If someone says, I have a plan and this is what I'm going to do, we absolutely go to the assessment tool. Some things you might say is, tell me what that feels like when you want to get out of that space. What happens before? What was going on that led you to that? Or what would be different if you weren't here? Or why would that be better? Okay, we're just going to kind of dig in and get a little bit curious. They might say, I wish I was invisible. How would that help you if you were invisible? Or how would other people feel if you were invisible? So you're just kind of trying to do those like questions that we first learned in graduate school. And afterwards, if anybody wants me to send some questions with that, I can send that out. I know that there's a lot that can be said about suicide, and I'm happy to send out some follow-up questions to that can lead into the assessment. Again, I think assessments are great and they're very good documentation, especially in agencies and schools. I just don't want you to jump right to that and you miss the connection piece of what this kid's really trying to tell you. Okay. Okay, so I'm not a huge fan of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Kara,
Oh,
1 second. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Elizabeth had something to say. Go ahead,
Yes,
Elizabeth.
you don't mind me sharing, but I have a story I'd like to share. You talked about why people don't want to take medication. I know before my suicide attempt when I was 19, I'm a survivor. I had a near-death experience where I saw God and He offered me another chance. But anyway, my mom didn't want me getting on medication or going to counseling because she said it was embarrassing. That's another reason, and I kind of wish I would have went anyway.
That's a great point, Elizabeth. Thank you. Sometimes
Thank you.
there's shame and stigma associated with mental health help. Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing that. I am not a huge fan of cognitive behavioral therapy. This is my bias. A lot of people will disagree. That's totally okay. People say it's evidence-based. When I was in graduate school in 2006, this was one of the main things. The problem I don't like with cognitive behavioral therapy is, so it's thoughts, feelings, behaviors. So sometimes we're challenging the thought because we're saying that it's a bad thought. And with internal family systems, we're going to say all thoughts and all parts are good. Let's get to know them. That being said, I think there are some really great tools from it. This is a tool that I think you could use. This is a thought card. I had a client that was afraid to get into the car because she had a car accident. So what was the negative core? What was the intrusive thought? I'm going to get hurt in the car, right? And then what evidence challenges that? Or what are some things when you're calm that you can say to challenge that? I've been in the car 15,000 times and I've been okay. My parents are good, responsible drivers. I will be okay. I can trust my parents to keep me safe in the car. We actually named her anxiety as Bob. So Bob is a nobody. So this is just a tool that you can use at the very end. I think sometimes we go through these seminars and we don't have tools. The whole last 15, 20 minutes is going to be tools, but this is a tool that you can use. What is the intrusive thought? And then what is the evidence that that's not true? I have clients walking around high schools holding these thoughts or putting it in their phone. So like when your brain is activated, when you're in that hyper arousal place, something bad's going to happen, something bad's going to happen, something bad's going to happen. I'm not going to be okay. Can we calm down our body and our brain? And can we try to go to our facts? This can be a really helpful tool. Okay. So the world of not good enough. So in my mind, this is why the suicide rate keeps rising. And this is the whole stink of why I do this presentation. When I go to high schools and I do assemblies, I say this question. I'm going to say something to you, and if the answer is yes, I want you to stand up. So I have done this so many times all around the country. Are you good enough? One school had 20 out of 109 kids stand. It is usually only about 20% of kids are standing up. The answer is yes. So then I go around with my microphone and I say, okay, prove to me that's true, or if you're not good enough. And so the people who say I'm good enough, they say, I'm kind, I'm helpful, I'm good, I work hard, and it's good. I'm really curious, and the clients you work with, ask them this. Why are you not good enough? There must be so much evidence. Convince me that that's true. I don't get good grades. I got cut from the part. I'm not going to go to college. I fight with my siblings. I'm not a good role model, all these things. So then I say, okay, so everybody else in this audience who isn't a good sibling, are you saying they're not good enough? Oh, no, 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 no. It's just me, right? So this idea that I have to hustle for my worth and my worth is based on my achievement. And we'll talk about that. And this is a really, really scary place to be. Every client that comes into my office, I do 3 questions. Doesn't matter your age or gender. Are you skinny enough? Are you pretty enough? And are you good enough? I'm going to tell you that 80% is a solid no on all 3. That's the self-worth piece. That's the depression. That's the anxiety. Where are we getting those messages that we have to hustle for love and belonging and worth? Where are we getting those messages? I'm not saying it's all coming from home. Where are we getting those messages? And if I was talking to this client, I'd say, how old is that part of you that doesn't feel good enough? And they'll say, man, I remember when I was 6, I was at my piano recital and I froze, Kara, and I couldn't remember. And I started sobbing and I told myself I would never feel that embarrassment again. So I practice everything all of the time and it's not okay for me to make a mistake. So that 6-year-old part, anytime that she messes up, reminds her that she's not good enough? How old is that part? And where did you get that messaging from? This is the most critical slide probably of my entire program. The way adults talk to youth becomes their inner voice. That's the self-worth piece. If you criticize your children, they don't stop loving you. They stop loving themselves. I see this all the time in youth sports, and I know you do too. I'm working with a couple. I see the woman for therapy. She's a 45-year-old woman of 3 kids, and she tries to sneak her husband in. And she said to me, Kara, my 7th grade daughter was going to volleyball tryouts, and she started sobbing, and she broke down, and she said, I can't do it. These other girls, they're prettier, they're stronger. Look how they're walking. They all like each other. I can't do it. And she said, and my husband started yelling at her saying, get in there. Don't let them win. You're stronger than this. What are you doing? So now we have a kid crying. We have a husband who's yelling at her. And she says, and I just freeze. Every time my kid falls apart, I know my husband's going to get mad. And I feel like I'm always just kind of in the middle of this. Here's the thing. And she says to me, Kara, can you start doing therapy with Ava to improve her self-worth? And I said, I could probably see your husband, and if he talked a little bit kinder to her, her self-worth would get better. I'm not going to therapy. I don't need to go to therapy, and all the things we have of reasons we don't want to go to therapy, and that's fine. But we have to make a decision. Do we want kids with healthy, high self-worth and self-esteem, and we're not going to get onto them? Or are we going to get onto them and they're going to not have self-worth? We can't have both. If you criticize your kid, they will stop loving themselves. I was working with a high school baseball team in the spring. I'll never forget this. And I had them do an activity. And I said, write down the worst things that you say to yourself when you're in a slump. You're terrible. You're awful. You effing suck. You shouldn't be on this team. You're an embarrassment. You're a screw up. So then I read them out loud to everybody. So then, and this team went on to win the district team. So this is a very high, good athlete team. Then I said, write down the worst things that have ever been said to you by coaches, by parents, by teachers. You're an embarrassment. You'll never be as good as your brother. I'm not going to keep showing up if you're going to play like ass. I'm not going to waste my money on you. Why do you do this? You suck. You're terrible. If you're ever in a spot with 20 high school boys, and I read them all out loud. I did this with my football team. I did this with my baseball team. It is powerful. And I said to the baseball players, raise your hand if you got those messages from people in your life, in your house. Every single person raised their hand. I said, raise your hand if it was the males in your house. Every single person raised their hand. This is not a knock on dads. What did I say? Everyone's doing the best they can with what they know. It was powerful. So then I have to go to the parent meeting, and not every parent wants to hear about mental health, believes in social emotional learning. And I know I'm just some girl just chatting. And I was like, oh God, how's this going to go? So I told the parents about the activity. This guy raised his hand and I was like, oh shit, how is this going to go? And he said, Kara, can we ask our kids what they said? I was like, yeah, you can. We have got to start learning how to speak to our kids, and we have to empower these youth that we're working with to say things to the parents like, hey, after the game, I don't want to talk about the game. They say, Kara, you can't say that to my parents. They'll say I'm ungrateful. They'll say that I'm disrespectful. You can't say that. I say, this is what you say back to them. This is what you say. If you continue to talk to me about these things, we won't have a close relationship. If you continue to criticize, or however you want to say it nicer, we won't be close. I said, what are they going to argue back to that? So then we think about that. Some of these kids are raised in houses where no matter what you do, you're loved and it's okay. And some are raised in houses where You're only good. I'm only proud of you. I'm only coming to the game if you're starting, if you're playing, all these things. So when kids struggle, I want you to pay attention to what is the dialogue underneath the struggle. This will give you a lot of, and even for yourself, when you make a mistake, what do you say to yourself? Oh, it was a bad day. Or, gosh, I'm the worst person ever. I should quit this job. I'm not helping kids anymore. I'm not relatable. I'm too old. I'm too this. When your life gets hard, what do you say to yourself? So the optimistic explanatory style says that goalie was really good. Not me who was bad. It was a really good opponent. It was a rough game. Fortunately, there are plenty of other things going on in the rest of my life. Not everything, but my classes are great, right? What's the depressed kid gonna say? Same scenario. I just can't score this year. I think I'm a loser. Everyone's gonna think I'm a loser. Maybe I'm not good enough, right? What is that dialogue underneath the struggle will tell you so much information. So here's the question. What is my worth based on? I talk a lot about these families that I work with, and I say, what was the messaging around sports in your house, right? Think about your own. What was the messaging around sports? Go out there and have fun. Go out there and win. The Wojciechs are winners. Don't come home if you're not a winner. Or, what was the messaging around sports? My brother lives in Pittsburgh, and he has 3 kids, and he told me that he was at a 10-year-old basketball AAU game a couple weeks ago. And there was a parent on our side, his side, who gave a loser to another coach. He said, Kara, the coach came off that bench, came over to this dad and started punching him and threw him on the ground and was kicking him. He said it was insane. So now you have a whole arena of people, all ages, watching this trauma happen, right? There's a lot of pressure we're having, and we have a lot of adults that are losing their mind, right? And youth sports, I think, kind of brings out everyone's shit, like it just does, or not. You can tell a lot about someone with how they show up for their kids in 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old soccer game. You can tell a lot. What is your worth based on, and what was the messaging that you received or that these kids are receiving around their worth? So we talked about a little bit earlier, this hustle for love and worth, belonging. Let me convince you that I'm good enough. I have a judgmental part. I don't know if you have a judgmental part, but I have a judgmental part, which I'll be honest and admit, as a social worker, can be kind of tricky. And when I'm sitting in a space and someone comes in and has to tell me all their accolades or everything that they're so good at, there's a part of me that's like, oh boy. And we're sitting in a training and they're the ones taking the microphone the whole time, always talking. And for me, those are the people that hustle. Let me tell you how good I am. Let me tell you. Now listen, I think we've also swung the whole way and we haven't learned how to be proud of ourselves. I think we're too humble. I'm not going to tell you how good I am. I'm going to show you my actions, my work ethic. Can I sit back? Can I speak when I need to? Can I be a leader when I need to? When I don't feel good enough, I'm going to prove to you that I am. And on sports teams, that's so obvious. And when I'm on these sports teams and these girls are rolling their eyes and they're not passing the ball and they're doing all these things, there is this hustle that I'm better than you. And that is just not going to be helpful for our world. That's just not going to be helpful. And I'm seeing that a lot in these sports teams that I'm working with. And when I work with these sports teams, I'm really big on accountability, personal accountability and self-awareness. Are you aware of what you do to the space that you walk into? So whether you're working as a classroom teacher or a therapist or with a team, I have this activity. What color do you make the team? See, when I started working with families, I would do family therapy. And in a red family, there's violence, there's disconnect. We don't really like each other. I tell you what I think of you. Hey, that outfit looks really ugly on you, or you shouldn't be getting another role, or there's just a lot of shame, right? In a red family, there's not trust, there's not connection, there's not respect. In a yellow family, it's a little bit more connected. Maybe we're kind of on our phones. We show up. We don't know how to always do conflict, but there's more togetherness. And then in a green family, we do conflict, we talk about conflict, but we do it in a kind, loving, clear way. So I would work with families and I would say, what color do you make the household? And I'd say, what color did dad? And the dad would say green. The kids are like, I mean, dad, you weren't really green the other night when you went off on mom. Sometimes it gets kind of awkward, right? What color do you make the team is the work that I do with these teams. And so my challenge to these youth is, what color do you make the space when you come in? How do people feel? Self-awareness is so big. How do people feel? When teachers say pick a partner, does anyone ever choose you as a partner? And when I say to parents whose kids are struggling socially, I say, I want to know what this kid's like in downtime. I know that they get good grades. I know that they get their work done. I know that they have perfectionism. But when there is downtime and everyone is doing their own thing, what is your kid doing? That's what I want to know. That's the information. Do they know how to connect? Do they know what to say? We have a lot of kids with social anxiety and they're trying too hard or they're not trying at all. And I say, you have social anxiety, you don't feel good enough, and yet you put your headphones on in the hallway, or you put your head down, or you go to your phone because that's what makes us feel safe. And what did Kara say at the beginning? We have to lean into those hard things, into those areas of discomfort and be uncomfortable. There's a lot of research coming out about attachment styles. I'm not going to talk about it a ton right now, but I suggest that you look into this. So we want the clients that we work with to have secure attachment, right? Can I be alone? Can I self-regulate? Am I self-aware? For me, the happiest, healthiest people, and if I did a TED Talk, it would say, I'm able to be self-aware and I can regulate my emotions. I can take care of myself, not to an extreme, but secure attachment means with the relationships in my life, warm and caring, trusting and forgiving, good boundaries, right? Because boundaries are the way that I can love me and you at the same time. Responsive and open. I'm able to say to my mom, hey mom, when I come home from school and you want to talk about all these things, can you just give me 5 and then we'll be good? And she doesn't flip out, right? Attachments, when we have those attachments from infancy and childhood, that then affects our ability to have relationship with ourself. So if I grow up in a household with secure attachment with my intimate relationships, my mom and my dad, my siblings, I'm more likely to have a secure and healthy attachment with myself. I see anxious attachment coming out of the woodwork in these high schoolers, coming out of the woodwork. Relationship insecurities. I have to know where you are at all times. We have to FaceTime when we go to bed. I'm tracking you everywhere you go. Who did you talk to? What was she wearing? Why were you there that whole time? I have to know everything because I am anxious without you. Fear of abandonment, right? Mood fluctuation, highly sensitive and over accommodating. What does that mean, over accommodating? Where do you want to eat? Oh, I don't care. What do you want to do? I don't care. As long as you're happy, I'm happy. Because why? I can't lose you. I will do whatever I can to not lose you, right? That's that anxious attachment style. Avoidant is I have to only depend on myself. People are going to let me down, right? I'm unresponsive to those partners. Fear of closeness. We often see this in households where people were having to parent their parents, right? When kids were having to parent their parents, they learned to meet their own needs. They avoid intimacy and they don't want to make those connections and attachments because people will let me down. And then disorganized, lack of empathy, wants closeness, but kind of fearful of others, unable to self-regulate. The highs and the lows, and then the highs and then the lows. This is important to understand when you're working with families. What was attachment like in your house? What is the relationship like with parents? Anytime I do an intake, it doesn't matter if they're 70 or if they're 12. Give me a grade between the relationship with you and your parents. A, B, C, D, F. Give me a grade between the relationship with your parents' marriage if they're still together. What was modeled to you? How was conflict talked about? What do you remember, right? You can tell so much information about that grade that they give. If someone says A+ for everything, I'm like, we also have youth that feel protective of their parents, right? And they don't want to talk bad about them, which is fine. And we get to know that part, but it's also that part of, it's all my fault. And it's like, I want to protect them because I don't want you to know anything about them. And what did I say in the beginning? This is every client I work with. Everyone is doing the best they can with what they know. but I needed more. Some clients get stuck in the, I'm so mad, my parents ruined my life and all this. Some clients get stuck in, everything was good, Kara. Everything was good. Everything was fine. I'm like, well, why are there cuts on your arms then, right? Everyone in my life is doing the best they can with what they know, but I needed more. And we want to help youth understand, and adults who we work with, what are those needs? What are your needs? Many don't even know what their needs are because they don't even know that they're allowed to have them. Does anybody have anything they want to say before we keep moving? I know I'm throwing a lot at you.
Here, we do have a couple of questions in the chat. Jessica wanted to know, how do you balance having kids and not caring what others think versus being self-aware?
Great question. The part of me that cares what people think of me, if we were doing therapy, I would say, how old is that part? And you might say 10. And we have to do some work around that part, right? So if I live my life with that part driving the bus, I really lose my sense of self. So I'm just aware of when that part comes up, like, ooh, that mom is being really judgy. Ooh, that's getting me. And I say, okay, do I want to live my life for her or for me? And maybe it's a 10-year-old part. How old is that part of you, Jessica, that feels like people are judging you? It's 10. So if we were doing work, we would go into, in my office, we'd go into that 10-year-old and we'd bring up that memory. And then you would take care of that 10-year-old. And what would you now, as an adult with a full brain, say to that 10-year-old? You are loved. You are okay. You are unique. You can do what you want. It's going to be okay, right? So just recognize it's just a part of you that's trying to protect you from rejection, and just be aware of things that we can do to give ourselves those positive messages so that we don't care so much. Very, very normal. Normalize, oh, that's just that people pleaser part kicking up. What can I do to get back into self where I trust myself and my abilities?
Someone else asked, Krista says, how does grief play into the attachment styles? Like if you had a parent that passed?
That's a great question. I think grief is one of the most missed things in therapy. We miss out on that. I have a lot of my clients do grief timelines. It's a really important tool that I would challenge you to do. Remember that grief is not even just the absent or loss of a person. I work with a lot of homeless students when I was a school social worker that I'm living in this house and this house. Grief is loss of dreams, loss of opportunities, loss of connection with my teacher I was so close to. I would love playing on the softball team. So absolutely, unfortunately, there's not enough time to get into that more, but great question. Grief absolutely connects with the attachment styles. I remember in 8th grade, my best friend's dad died. And I remember the next day, my parents were like 10 minutes late coming home and I was flipping out, right? That's that trauma response. So grief makes us just feel a little bit more anxious. So you're going to see more anxious attachment kick in. If there was secure attachment in the foundation, they'll click back to that quicker. But if there's already anxious attachment and then grief happens, it's really important to do some therapy around that, because then it's like, I'm so afraid that everybody in my life is going to die and we feel like we can't ever be alone. And then that can have long-term consequences. Great question.
And last question, how do you pull kids out? How do you pull out of kids what their needs are?
I think it's, first of all, you let them know that they're allowed to have them. It's just baseline, right? Like, what do you need? Like, do you need quiet? Do you need connection? Do you need downtime? So giving them a list, even just like, these are some needs that kids have. Like, I need, when I get home from school, mom and dad, introverts have a really hard time in schools, right? Schools are made for extroverts. So when they come home, and I get it, the parent's like, blah, 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 blah. I love that the parent wants to connect, but the introvert kid needs some time to unwind. So even just helping them know what are some things that they might need, or I need time away from my boyfriend, or I need more time at my mom's house than my dad's house. Maybe giving them an idea and then say, let's talk about these things. How do you feel in your body when you talk about this? Do you feel anxious or do you feel calm? So giving them a list and then kind of helping them figure out and learning how to trust their gut, right? That I know what I need. Like I have a crush on it. Like that's how you want to teach that, right? Like, you know, that kid in your class, you have a crush on him. What does that feel like? Well, when you really like something, when you need it, it's going to feel like that. So even just teaching it like that can be a helpful thing. Okay, great. All right, people pleasing. Man, this is coming up all over, and we think it's all girls, but it's not. This is so common. I love this Adam Grant. If you ever want to follow someone great I love that he's a dude in the mental health world. The root of chronic people pleasing is not concern for others. It's concern for their approval, the hustle. Concern for their approval. This is exactly what we're talking about. Caring drives kindness. The fear of being disliked fuels self-sacrifice. Insecure people aim to be adored by all. Secure people focus on earning the respect of those who matter most. Caring drives kindness. The fear of being disliked fuels self-sacrifice. How many women do I see sacrifice everything for their kids, or their mother-in-law comes in town and she's sleeping in the master bedroom and she gets the nice sheets and she gets all this because I have to have my mother-in-law like me, and we lose ourselves because we don't want to say no to anyone. And we become a doormat because it's so important that they like us. And when we live our life pleasing others, it's pretty empty. Because what do you actually have control over? And this is what people pleasing is. I am responsible for other people's feelings. I teach college classes to girls, and the first thing we say is, I am not responsible for other people's feelings. Some adults are like, ooh, Kara, that hurts. Like, how does that hit for you, right? So people pleasing is, I think I'm responsible for other people's feelings. These are not true. This is what you think. It is my job to make others happy. I am only happy when others are happy. If someone does not like me, I have done something wrong. I am a failure. Love is conditional, and it's often only based on my performances. So that's why I hustle, so that I can get that love. I work with a lot of kids, and they'll say to me, I say, well, did you tell your mom that you're struggling? Like, your mom seems really nice. You have a pretty good relationship with her. Can you just talk to her about your anxiety? Kara, my mom, she homeschooled us for like the first 8 years. She devoted her whole life into taking care of us. If I tell my mom I'm anxious, she's going to blame herself. And then my mom starts crying, and then I feel bad, and then I feel like it's my fault. Kara, I cannot tell my mom I'm struggling. Did you tell your friends that you don't want to always go get tacos because you don't like them? No, because I don't want them to get mad at me. It's just not that big a deal. This is what it's not that big a deal, meaning I'm not that big a deal. My opinions aren't that big a deal. Somehow our youth and our parents and adults and humans are getting the message that we are responsible for other people's feelings. And it is your job to make others happy. I had a woman yesterday, she went on a 10-day trip with her in-laws, and she said, I'm only happy when everyone else is happy. I go, how was that trip for you? She said, it was horrible. She said, I planned to go on this exotic snorkeling trip, and the weather was bad, and I was apologizing the whole day. I go, man, you are really, really powerful that you can change the weather. She's like, I just needed them to have a good time. I go, you don't have any control over that. And we have a lot of kids that are getting that their worth is based on how everybody else. When I'm raised in a house with dysfunction, if there's abuse or alcoholism, and dad comes home or mom comes home, either one, cracks open a beer, I learn, what do I need to do to be good? Can I go and get their shoes? Can I go make their dinner? I learn to acquiesce to everybody else. Because if dad, when he's drinking, or mom, when she's drinking, when she starts raising her voice, I got to stay away. And I don't want to be the one that causes the abuse. My feelings don't matter. Let me play small. Let me be perfect grades. Let me not rock the boat. My brother can be the one rocking the boat. As long as I make dad happy, I'm good. It is my job to make everyone else happy. And when we grow up with houses with immature parents, which is there's a lot of great podcasts about that, when we become the parentified child, so when we're taking care of our parents' emotions, and I read this somewhere, it said, parentified children are parenting the children, parenting the adults when they're younger, and then they're getting parented by their adults when they're older, meaning their parents are telling them how to live their life when they're adults. That's a whole problem. But that's how that messaging starts. This is the root of people pleasing. I love these two slides. So Instagram has a lot of great things. When I do this presentation in schools, we talk a lot about the marks and the comments on report cards. So maybe this is you. Think about this kid. Carrie is a delight to have in class. She basically parents herself. So mature and such a good girl. Oh my gosh, that Carrie is always so helpful. She never causes any trouble. Always respectful, that Carrie. We never need to worry about her. All right. So we're like, yeah, this is the teacher's pet. So what does Carrie learn how to get her needs met? Think about this now from this talk. How has Carrie learned to get the external validation, right? Well, guess what could happen to Carrie? And maybe this is you or clients you're working with. Carrie is a perfectionist and a people pleaser. She always has to have control, eating disorder, worries all the time. Are you mad at me? Really, really hard on herself, scared to set boundaries because the people will leave her, suppressing and numbing her feelings. Remember, my feelings don't matter. As long as you're happy, I'm good. Overachiever with burnout. Carrie, so loved and adored, all this external validation. When we rely on external validation, when we people please, when we hustle for love, worth, and belonging, this could happen. That it's okay to set boundaries, that I'm allowed to say no, that I can take a break, that I don't have to be perfect, that my worth is not based on the approval of others, because there's going to be people that don't like you. I have so many adults that say to me, Kara, if people don't like me, I have failed. I said, John, you don't have control over that. He's like, I know. This is the pain that a lot of us are living with. Remove the I want you to like me sticker from your forehead and place it on the mirror where it belongs. Fitting in versus belonging. Brene Brown has a minute little video on this that I want to show you right now.
I was so shocked to learn in the research that the opposite of belonging is fitting in. Because fitting in is assessing a group of people and thinking, who do I need to be? What do I need to say? What do I need to wear? How do I need to act? And changing who you are. And true belonging never asks us to change who we are. It demands that we be who we are. Because if we fit in because how we've changed ourselves, that's not belonging. That's not belonging because you betrayed yourself for other people. And that's not sustainable.
The research shows that the worst kind of shame that you can receive is not fitting in or belonging in your family. For whatever reason, there's a lot of research around that. We have so many kids that are just trying to do whatever everybody else wants them to be. I said, do you even want to play basketball anymore? No, but I'm afraid that if I stop playing, my parents won't care about me, or the only thing my dad and I have to talk about, Kara, is basketball. If I quit, what kind of relationship are we going to have? We have so many youth that are just trying to figure out, if I do this, will you love me? Will I belong? And we're in these social circles with these friends who aren't nice, but they're the popular kids. And who am I if I'm not with the popular kids? Fitting in versus belonging. In a lot of our schools, we have students that are like ducks. So what does a duck do on the outside? It swims along and it's so pretty. And the ducks say things like this. How are things going? Good. How's your family? Good. Friends? Good. Grades? Good. On the outside, it looks like everything's perfect. But what do we know? What do ducks do underneath the water? Right? They hustle. They work so hard. But I can't ask for help and I can't let anyone know that I'm struggling because that is the facade. I need everyone else to know that I have it. So no one knows that at night I'm drinking Trulies. I'm working with a girl that drinks 10 Trulies a day. Star soccer player, tore her ACL, lost everything. Then her boyfriend broke up with her. She comes to talk to me because she's suicidal. She's drinking 10 Trulies a day. Nobody would know. See, when her life was perfect with soccer, everything was good. Now that she's better, her parents are saying to her, do you really need to go to that therapist anymore? That's really expensive. I don't know if we can afford that. They just bought a beach house. I mean, what are you even talking about with that therapist anymore? She said, Kara, you're the only place that I can let people know that I'm not perfect and I'm really struggling. She said, I've never cried before. People in my family don't cry. And the parents say, what is that therapy even doing for you? We've got to look out for these ducks. Perfectionism, defensiveness, high personal standards, focus only on the results. There's a self-sabotage, all or nothing. I'm good or I'm bad. Pushed by fear. There's this inner critic, which we'll talk about, cannot ask for help. And again, perfectionism is self-sabotage. I'm only perfect if I'm good. So no one's perfect. So then when you go back to that activity I told you when I'm having the kids stand up and I say, are you good enough? This is what the perfectionist will say. I can be better. I could have done better. So it's this fear that if I accept that my worth is good, that I'm a hard worker, that I'm a good person, they think that they will just fall to the ground and become lazy. So it's this idea that shame and criticism fuels me to be better. And there's this fear that if I stop criticizing myself, if I stop telling myself I'm fat, a lot of people, I'm fat. So that makes me go to the gym. And I said, Julie, do you really think if you stop calling yourself fat, you would stop going to the gym? She's like, well, no. I'm like, but there's a part of you that thinks that, right? We have to be fueled. And think about for yourself. Why do I go to the gym? Because so I don't gain weight because I'm fat, or because it makes my body healthy and I feel good and I feel better when I fuel my body. How much do you rely on that inner critic? And that's what happens with perfectionism. I love this slide, right? The world before and after you make a mistake. It's the exact same world. And remember what I said? I told my kids I want them to fail, and they said, Kara, you're so messed up. So there's 3 types of perfectionists. The socially prescribed perfectionist, pressure from others to be perfect. The other-oriented, very critical of others and hold them to very high standards. Man, when I have those people that are so judgmental of others, when you see people putting everyone down, your relationship with the world is a mirrored image of your relationship with yourself, right? And I talk about this in sports teams. If you're that girl that's creating all that drama on the sports team and you're talking bad about this freshman that's getting all that playing time, sister, you better do a U-turn and look inward, right? Nobody wants to be around that person that's hurt people. But I know the way she's talking about her team is a microcosm of the way she's talking about herself. And self-oriented, most adaptive because they have high standards, set goals, and are very motivated. Here's the perfectionism spiral. Try something new, make a mistake. I'll never do that again. What happened to the comfort zone? And what did I say? We got to get out of that comfort zone, right? Now you're stuck. Don't try anything new. Your comfort zone gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So these are good questions to ask when you're working with youth. What does it feel like when it's not perfect? What would it say about you if you weren't perfect? What would be so bad about that? What good things happen to people who are perfect? What would it mean about you if you weren't able to be, do, or have these? So these next 2 slides for me are so crux for I travel the country. My friend and I just started a business. We do professional development for school districts. I'd love for you or businesses to contact us. These 2 slides are the most instrumental slides that we show. I guess I said the other one about the self-talk one, but these 2 are when we do a lot of trauma trainings, a lot of trauma-informed school trainings. These negative beliefs about self are what is fueled by that inner critic or what our parents have said to us, right? So if we were in a group right now, I would give you in person, I would give you a sticker and I would say, because I would get us moving and I'd say, go put a sticker by which one of these resonates for you or comes up with you for you on a bad day, right? When your day just goes so terrible, which one of these comes up for you? And let's face it, you're working with kids, who are getting sicker with a lack of resources. I commend every one of you on this training because I know the work is not easy and it's so needed and the money's not always good. So on a bad day, which one of these comes up for you? And then if you were in my office, I would say to you, okay, so say it went into that, I have to be in control. Then I'd say, okay, Jamal, how old is that part of you that has to feel in control, right? How old is that part? Then I'd say, and what is that memory? Then can we go back to that part, right? So anytime Jamal feels out of control, say that something happened, I'm making this up, I don't know Jamal, say that something happened when he was 10, right? And say that there was a fire and somebody in his house got hurt and they were sharing a room, maybe his brother was sharing a room and he didn't get him out and his brother got hurt. So now he feels like he has to always be in control and he can't let his guard down. So now Jamal is an adult and he's in his adult world and something happens and he didn't have control. Jamal, if he hasn't done any work, goes back to that 10-year-old part and he remembers that fire and he remembers that, right? You resort back to the age that the trauma first happened. This is really, really important. When you're working with families and you're calling parents and you're telling them about their kids that aren't coming to school or having a hard time, that parent, if you're making them, if they're thinking they're not good enough, they're going back into that 7-year-old time when their dad told them that they were not good enough. Many of the parents that we are working with are emotionally stunted, right? Doing the best they can with what they know. We go back into the age that that trauma first happened, and these negative beliefs about ourselves are powerful. When I go to middle schools and high schools, I have kids go around with dots. And the most common ones are, I should have done something and it's my fault, which is kind of surprising. We have a lot of kids running around with guilt and shame and feeling like it is their fault when things fall apart in their world. So you say, gosh, Kara, this is feeling kind of depressing. How can we help these kids? Well, the good news is we can help them have adaptive beliefs. This is actually from an EMDR training that I did. I don't know if anyone's familiar with EMDR, but EMDR is I go back into the traumatized event and I get myself activated. And then EMDR says when you do something from one side of the brain to the other side of the brain, so you can either do this or there's like a lightsaber, it rewires the brain. So instead of Jamal, when he feels out of control, instead of him thinking, I have to be in control, Jamal, with some work, says, I can safely let go of some control, right? So the goal is to shift from the negative beliefs to the adaptive beliefs. I am okay as I am. I am good enough. I did what I could. Again, we usually do these trainings for 3 hours, so we would really go more into depth with this. I feel like I'm just giving you some salt and pepper about some of these things, but hopefully it's connecting, and I always want to be aware of people's time and not wasting time. Okay, so the role of the inner critic. So this is the IFS stuff. So here's the thing. If maybe some of you saw Inside Out 2, and I'm going to give you a really short synopsis, but if you can go to any trainings on internal family systems, I highly recommend it. So internal family systems says we all have these parts, okay? And the parts are trying to protect you. All parts are good, okay? So there's managers and they're very proactive. They try to control every aspect of your life so you don't feel pain, right? Let me be perfect. Let me be perfect. Let me be a people pleaser. Let me stay up in this anxious part. Let me think of everything. The overthinkers, the overachievers, the overplanners. They run your daily life. Managers do not want you to feel pain ever. They give this illusion of control and safety. And even the inner critic is a manager. If I think of all the bad things that people have said to me, if I hate myself enough, then when the world rejects me, I already know what's coming, right? So your inner critic is a protector. Your perfectionist part is a protector. Managers don't want to feel pain. Well, on the other side is these firefighters, and they're like, I feel, what does a firefighter do when it comes into a house? Sprays the water, makes a mess, get me the F out of this pain, right? Let me numb out, let me get out of this. This is gonna be your suicide part. I can get you out of this pain. This is gonna be your alcoholism, your cutting, your eating disorder, video games. And remember, all of these parts are good. So even the person in your family that's an addict, you're like, what do you mean? Because this part is saying it is better for you to drink. It is better for you to smoke. It is better for you to steal and gamble than actually feel the pain. So the managers are like, we don't even talk about feelings at all. Firefighters are like, let me get you out of this pain, okay? So these firefighters, these managers are protecting these exiles, these little bitty baby parts of you that hold pain, the trauma, the wounds, the rejection, the shame. So I was raised in a house and I was pretty sensitive. And anytime I cried, my dad would say, "You're a pussy. We don't cry in this family. You're a pussy." So I now have this anger part that protects me. And anytime I feel any kind of emotions, I get angry. So this anger part protects this little sensitive kid. So I get in fights and I do all of these things because it's not safe for me to feel. It is safer for me to get kicked out of school. My anger part is a protective part. It is safer for me to get kicked out of school than to feel this. So here's another, again, I'm just giving you, we could be in 30 hours of training of this, but again, managers are protectors of the system, attempt to keep the person in control. The firefighters act after the exiles. They're upset. They either soothe or distract. I don't want you to feel. So the examples were sleeping, shopping, working, dieting, exercise, computer and video games. Let me just numb out. And these exiles hold painful emotions that have been isolated from the conscious self for protection of the system. They become extremely extreme in their efforts to be cared for. So this could be rage, dependency, shame. So they're carrying all of the pain. And so what we do is, and when we work with kids, it's really pretty powerful because a kid comes into your office and they got kicked out again because they got in another fight. And so I would say like, man, and these parts are trying to drive the bus, but when the parts drive the bus, it's really pretty dangerous. So here's some language. Man, Colleen, I see that anger part was really trying to drive your bus and it was really working hard. They'd be like, yeah. I'd be like, okay, so let's notice it. Where did that anger part show up in your body? Oh, Kara, it showed up in my chest. Okay, so let's just notice that anger part. Notice that part. Can you be with it? So that anger part's just trying to protect you. Yeah. And if we were actually doing a system, you would get to know the part and you would ask the anger part, what are you doing for Colleen? What is your job? And actually the part would say something like, I don't want her to get hurt. I don't want her to get bullied. I don't want her to feel like she felt with her dad when she was younger. You'd say, does that make sense to you, Colleen? Yeah. And you'd say, what are you afraid would happen if you weren't doing that job? She would get hurt. And then you say, anger part, what do you need? How do you feel about your job? The anger part's like, oh, I am so tired, right? These parts work so hard to protect us. And you say, anger part, what do you need from Colleen to not have to work so hard? And we're like, I need Colleen to know that she can use her words to protect herself and she can use her brain. She doesn't have to always get in fights. So then we say to the anger part, how do you feel towards the anger part, Colleen? Oh, I understand why it's working so hard. So you say to the anger part, thank you for working so hard to protect me. But you can relax. I'm going to counseling with Miss Beth and she's helping me meditate. Miss Beth is helping me learn some emotional regulation skills and de-escalation skills. You can relax, anger part. Thank you. You've been working really hard. I know I've gotten into a lot of fights, but you can relax, anger part. I will be okay. So you can do this with the inner critic, with the anxious part, right? Anxious, I talk to the anxious part. What are you afraid would happen if you weren't working so hard? I'm afraid she wouldn't be safe. How do you feel about your job, anger part? I'm so tired. But actually, when we're in self, right? So these parts are going to keep driving the bus until they trust us. And when we're in self, this is the magic. These are the 8 C's. These parts will relax when we have qualities of these 8 C's. And if you can work with your kids on these 8 C's, when I'm calm, I actually make better choices about my anxiety and can keep my family safe. And when I have clarity and I get curious, what's coming up for me? Why is it that every time I walk into that school, I feel sick? Compassion for myself and others, courage, confidence, creativity. So a lot of us, when we're doing paint or dance or music or movement, our parts can relax. And when I'm connected, right? When I have these 8 things, those parts can relax. So any way you can help your students or your clients identify these C's can be really, really super helpful. Again, I'm throwing all of this at you. I recommend that you take like an IFS circle. You can Google Dick Schwartz internal family systems and you can watch an actual session. But this for me is the powerfulness of why I don't love cognitive behavioral therapy, because this is saying, oh, anger part, thank you. I know you're trying to protect me. Oh, inner critic, thank you for how hard you're working. But you don't have to keep tearing me down. You can relax. I can build myself up. I can have compassion for myself and confidence, and good things will happen. Okay, so I know we have about 5 minutes, so I'm going to try to roll through some, and I want to give you time for questions. So these are some of the tools that I promised you. All right, I'm going to have you watch this video, and this for me is, I love Dr. Becky. She wrote a book, Good Inside. She's a psychologist. She has a podcast. She's an awesome parent teacher, but I love what she says about this.
Frustration tolerance is perhaps the most important skill we need to teach our kids when they're young. Let me explain. For our kids' entire life, success depends on the ability to tolerate frustration. After all, whenever you're working on something and haven't succeeded, when you've struggled and have to bounce back from failure, when you want to do something you've never done before that feels a little bit risky or scary, there's always frustration involved. If our kids learn when they're young, when I'm frustrated, someone picks me up and exits me from the frustration. They do the puzzle for me. They always open the jar for me. They tie my shoes, even though I'm at an age when I can learn to do that myself. Then what our kids go into the teenage years and adulthood years expecting is, who is going to take away my frustration? That looks like entitlement. That looks like massive anxiety, because our kids have never learned that they can actually get through frustration and participate in life. When our kids are younger, we want to support them when they're frustrated. Ooh, that puzzle's so hard. Ooh, that jar is really, really tight. I wonder what would happen if you take a deep breath and keep trying. Then what our kids learn is, I can tolerate frustration. I have frustration tolerance, which is the skill that's going to propel me into a successful adulthood.
So number 1 tool, frustration tolerance, right? Can I help kids learn how to handle big emotions and not be afraid of those emotions and talk about those emotions? Tool number 2, I love these slides. Teaching people how to regulate their emotions is crime prevention. It's addiction prevention. It's the path to a world where people can disagree and still respect each other. We don't have that right now in today's climate. Growing up with parents who can regulate their own emotions is a less talked about form of generational wealth. If you didn't have someone who could see and hold space for your feelings and co-regulate with you, you're likely still learning how to navigate these skills in adult. I also love this Jason Schnitzer. He brings it real, keeps it real. This might sting, but you need to hear it. One of the biggest influences on a child's emotional intelligence is the father's ability to regulate his emotions. So I think about that kid whose dad got into a fight and was punching people at his 10-year-old basketball game. And I think about the messaging and the modeling that's being shown to him. Again, if we had more time, I would love to get more into this, but I want to keep it moving so you can see the rest of my tools. Life is hard, but so are you. You can do hard things. We don't want to feel bad for those kids we're working with. I can feel sad for you, but I'm not going to feel bad. I work with social workers and they say, Kara, I go home every night and I feel so guilty because I have a house and these kids are in a tent. And I'm like, Sandy, you feeling guilty doesn't change their narrative. It just makes you tired and grouchy or not able to work. Help them understand and don't tell them it's going to get better. You don't know that it's going to get better. We have to be honest. But I'm going to say, hey, listen here, Cole. I have seen when you come to school, I know life has been hard, but you go to the counselor's office and you show up for your therapy appointments and you access your resources. And I know life has been hard and I know it's not fair, but I have seen you do hard things, Cole, and I'm proud of you when you do them. Trying to change that narrative and those affirmations. Life is hard, but so are you. You can do hard things. Having compassion for ourselves. Can you have compassion for that part of you that's really hard on yourself? If you saw someone else this is an activity I do. I say, think of the worst things you say to yourself. Now turn to your neighbor and say them to them. So if I say, you're ugly, you're fat, you're awful, I would say, you're ugly. They go, oh, I would never do that, Kara. It's so mean. Right. We don't want to hurt their feelings, but we hurt ourselves all the time. Can you have compassion for that part of you that doesn't have confidence? Can you have compassion for you that part of you that gets really nervous when you have to speak in front of a class? Can you talk to that part and say, I've got you. You can do hard things. Compassion is a huge key. I love Abraham Hicks, and she has this emotional guidance scale that the idea is anytime we can get the kids to move up. So actually anger, this is a higher vibration emotion. Anger is actually better to feel than despair on the bottom, right? Despair is the fear that tomorrow is going to be as bad as today. If we can get when they're telling a story, if we can get them to move up the scale, sometimes people hang this in their office. Where are you at on this scale? That can be a really great tool. It doesn't always get easier, but you can learn to handle hard better. It's not about feeling better. It's about getting better at feeling. We have a whole society of youth that doesn't want to feel their feelings, right? The worst thing for a kid is to be grounded, be on their and not have their phone. As soon as we have any feeling, we want to distract. So we do weed, so we do alcohol, so we overachieve, so we work out. We do all of these things to not feel our feelings. We have to start feeling our feelings. Feel to heal. Feel to heal. We have to coach our clients and our kids to say, and also the parents that can handle those feelings too. Hey, I see that part of you that's really angry. It's not okay to be disrespectful in this house, but you're definitely allowed to be angry and help them work through that. We've got to help this generation know that they can feel their feelings in a safe way and that it's safe to feel their feelings. I also love this slide. The new generational wealth is growing up in a home where people rest and play without guilt. Many of us didn't have that example growing up. And this is the last thing whenever I work with at sporting things. This is a kid wrote this and I think it's awesome. Hey mom, on the car ride home from my game, no questions, please. No instant replays, highlight reels, or opinions about my coaches. Don't vent your frustrations or try to ease mine. I love that you come to watch me play, but I really don't want to play the game again in the car. It's super hard to say all of this to you, but what I would really love is if we could just get some food, your teen. And empowering teens to have those conversations about what they need and what they want. Thank you so much. I know that I rushed through. There's a lot going on probably in your brain. Please reach out to me I'd love to come and speak to your organization or your school. Check out my website. And if anybody has any questions, we have some time right now.
Thank you, Kara. It was a great presentation. A lot of people who relate to what it is that you were saying in the chat. We do have a few questions. Karina wanted to know if one of the parents has anxiety, how do you keep the child from learning that?
Oh, that's a great question. That's tough. Because modeling is so important, right? I think that first it starts with just talking with the kid about what have you noticed about your mom's anxiety and how do you feel when she's like that? So just noticing that. And then if you can have a conversation with the parent, if you can build a relationship with that parent and just going with compassion and empathy, like I see that part of you that gets really nervous whenever you drop David off at school. Because really, if we can work with the parent and try to empower them to understand their own anxiety with compassion, like I see how hard that anxious part is working for you. But also just naming for the kid that their parent has anxiety, and maybe you don't use the word anxiety, be like, I see that mom gets stressed out a lot. Yeah. What are some tools that you learn when you get stressed, right? So if you can work with the family, work with the family. But other than that, helping to name the kid and then helping them to have their own coping skills when they are seeing their mom with that anxiety. That's a tough one. It depends on the age too, as how much they're still impacted every day.
Lise wanted to know, how can you teach people to regulate their emotions if they just shut down and won't deal with the grief or speak about it?
I think that you just build the relationship, build the relationship, build the relationship. And if I'm getting to know a client, I don't want to talk about feelings right away. I'm going to play games. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to notice their feelings when they're doing those activities. So we're playing Uno. Oh, I see that part of you that got excited. Oh, how are you feeling? You're so mad because I did a draw too. I'm just going to start naming the feelings. And then we could put out some feelings cards and I could say, oh my gosh, I had a really stressful weekend. I got in an accident with a deer, so I felt mad. So I'm going to pick up the mad card. And then I went to my son's basketball game and he missed the shot and I was just so sad for him. So I'm going to pick up a sad. So we're going to talk about feelings without actually talking about the incident. Recognize that that part that's showing up is a protector part. Sometimes we want to go right into feelings because as a therapist, we think we should. There's protectors that are saying, nope, we're not talking about feelings. If we go right into trauma and feelings, we can do damage. We want to bow down to the resistance, right? Sometimes we get annoyed. Bow down to the resistance, recognize that great job those protectors are doing, and even say, hey, I've noticed that whenever we start talking about feelings, you kind of do this. Tell me about that part. If that part could talk, what would it say? Right? Or sometimes just building that relationship and helping them talk about why they don't want to talk about feelings is way better than going right into so tell me how it felt when you were sexually abused, right? We can't do that until the protectors give permission. Recognize the protectors are doing a really important job.
Yeah, that's a really important message, I think, because sometimes it like can't make anyone do anything, right? Like, so you gotta coax them into it. So, Haley wanted to know, is this something that you could start to work through on your own with a book or a workbook or other tools? And if yes, do you have any suggestions?
Um, The Body Keeps Score is really good by who's that? Bessel Van. Somebody knows who that is.
Vanderkop.
That's really good. And Dick Schwartz's No Bad Parts is another really good one. Gabby Bernstein is another good one. So there's a lot of good writers that are already writing about this. Absolutely, you can do work on yourself. Of course, I'm a proponent of therapy. I mean, I meet with an IFS therapist online in Kansas City. So just because we only know what we know, but therapy can be expensive and I recognize there are barriers. So absolutely, just the self-awareness piece, just start noticing where the emotions show up in your body. Just start with that. And then when you feel it, so when I feel anger, because I have an anger part, instead of reacting, I'm just going to notice where that anger shows up in my body. Just starting with that self-awareness of, oh, every time I go to my stepdad's, I feel anxious. I'm going to get curious about that. So just kind of start with noticing, name it to tame it, name it. And then if you just say, okay, anxiety part, I know you're anxious, but I can keep you safe. We can leave if he starts being creepy. We don't have to stay. We're not worried about his feelings. Just noticing it and recognizing, because your body, all the trauma is stored in your body.
All right. Ruth had a question. She said, how do you make kids do hard things when they refuse?
You don't. Again, go back to that part. Sounds like there's a part of you that doesn't want to do this. Let's get to know that part, right? I mean, you don't just have compassion for that part. I think for us, what comes up for you when those kids aren't doing the work, or we know they can make it easier, and just how can you stay calm? Because sometimes we get triggered, like this kid just wants to play Uno and doesn't want to do anything hard, but recognize the power in the relationship. I have a psychiatrist that said, Kara, just talking sometimes is what kids need to have that safe. Like one adult makes a difference and can keep a kid alive. So recognize we have to go at the pace that they set. I mean, I push, don't get me wrong. I'm like, hey, you don't really want to talk about things, but you're failing every class. So maybe we're going to talk for 20 minutes about what we can do. And then we're going to play a game. So I just kind of keep it real and I stick to the facts. Like, you keep getting in fights at school and your dad's mad at you, but you don't want to talk about this. Let me know. There's like a disconnect. So just stick to the facts, but I don't want to force too much because I want to be safe, that I respect them. It's that push pull, but I've got to build a relationship before I can even begin to push.
Agreed. One last question from Cindy. This was in the chat. How do you help a people pleaser or introvert deal with a college girl who bullies them and they live with? when they avoid conflict is how they feel is what's better. So it sounds like there's a person who's a people pleaser and an introvert, and they live with they're in college and they live with their roommate who bullies them, but they try to avoid that conflict because they feel like that's a good thing for them to do.
One of my favorite things I teach is when I know that I'm enough, I can tell others enough. So boundaries come from self-worth. So I would go back to just helping her know that she deserves to live in a different space, reminding her of what her needs are, and helping teach her some boundaries that she doesn't have to speak the boundary. So it could be a boundary like I'm not going to be in the room when she's there, or I'm going to, can I talk to the resident person? Can I switch rooms? But really kind of recognizing like that self-worth piece of like, let's get to know why do you feel uncomfortable in conflict? And it could be like, because her needs, I don't want her to get mad at me. Well, you don't really care what she thinks about you anyway, right? So just kind of processing around her avoidance of conflict, how old that part is, where she learned that messaging, and do some empowering self-worth stuff, and just start with some simple boundaries that she can set so she knows that it is safe and she feels better. How did you feel after you set that boundary, and kind of check back in about that?
Thank you. Thank you again, Kara. I want to be mindful of time. It is now 1:29. We want to thank you all for coming to this presentation, and we want to remind you that you can find information about our 2025 webinar series on our website at pacarepartnership.org, and remind you that our next presentation will be on March 26th, and the title is The 3 R's of Regulation, Supporting Both Immediate and Lasting Change. We want to thank Kara again, and we want to thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you on March 26th. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.